If you are a founder or a sales leader within a business turning over between 1 and 20 million, and you've experienced any of these challenges before, number one, you've got a sales team, but you don't really feel like they're accountable. You don't feel like they're owning their number and owning the results of their performance. If you've ever struggled with, you've got a top performing salesperson that wants to become a sales manager, but you don't think they're right for the job. If you've ever experienced, we've hired more salespeople, but the revenue hasn't actually gone up in correlation with the hires that we've made. It feels like we're stagnating and it feels like we're hitting a ceiling. If any of those resonate with you, that's exactly what we're covering off in this episode today. I'm speaking with Jason Green. Jason Green is one of the top implementers in the UK, EOS implementers. And what he's done over the course of several years is worked with dozens and dozens of organizations and helping them effectively scale their organization through systems. So he's been there, seen that, done it, and he's had the opportunity to see across lots of different organizations what tend to be the common patterns or the recurring themes as to where people go right and to where people go wrong. And ultimately, what we're going to be doing in this episode is unpacking all of those things and a nice back and forth on what is it that it actually takes in order to scale a sales function. Hope you enjoy the episode. Jason, welcome to Sales Traction. Great to have you on.
Thank you, Oliver. It's great to be on your podcast.
Well, look, we've got tons and tons of questions that I want to get into. The overarching theme of this conversation is going to be around accountability and how that extends specifically into the sales function. But the first question that I want to start off a little bit more higher level. You, of course, worked with lots and lots and lots of different companies, 1 to 20 million, ambitious, operating on EOS. What tend to be some of the most common patterns that you tend to see within the sales function?
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a few. I think I'll try and give you a top three. One that I see many times, and this actually just isn't just in the sales function, is I see, but this is specifically more dangerous in the sales function, is I see the best salespeople promoted to sales managers, which means you tend to lose twofold with those. One is because you've lost your best salesperson, so you tend to get less sales, and also they're not very good at managing teams as well. So that's one that I see. Promoting their best salesperson to be the sales manager or the sales lead. Secondly is I see team accountability. So I see that, when you've got a sales team, often they measure, if it's weekly or monthly, often they measure success as a team rather than individually. And so if you're not measuring success every week individually, that's a great way of having zero accountability in your sales team. And then the third one I would say is, I guess, I call it hero salespeople, and not systemizing.
How do you mean by hero salespeople?
People that it's really sort of not systemizing the sales process. So you rely on people, with a network that they built up over many years, and they're almost free spirits. You just sort of let them go out and do their thing. And I think that works great at the early stage of a business. But as that business grows and scales, you're not going to be able to hire, the hero salesperson is a hero salesperson because they've been with the business from the beginning and they know everything about the business. But as you grow and scale your business, you've got to systemize it, and you've got to give people the tools to be successful, by following a system.
Seems super obvious when you say it. Why do you think that most people don't go, well, of course, and that's just the default thing that they start off with? Why does it often need to be the case that there's a light shone on that problem in order for it to click?
Oh, that's a
Even like from my own perspective, oftentimes I get resistance of no, no, no. We're all doing our own thing. It's relationships. It's sales. It's just about being charismatic. But it can often be a little bit of a wrestle. So I'm curious in your take as to why you think that might be.
I think there's always a reluctance in in business. You know, this has worked for us, so it's going to work for us going forward. So that I think there's always a reluctance to change, and it's, you know, that transition can be quite painful for the hero salesperson. You
Yeah.
know, 'cause they've got to start following processes, and they become sort of more accountable. You have to be more accountable on a weekly basis, and you know, I think you end up with, you know, the wrong people in the wrong seats as you scale the business. And I think that is top to bottom in an organization. You know, as you scale, you know, past a million, past 5 million, there's sort of these healing ceilings that you hit, and you know, it's a bit like football. You know, the players that got you out of the championship that are getting the Premiership, and it, you know, you've got to keep evolving. Either your people have to evolve, or you've got to get the right people in the right seats to break through the ceiling. And I think that's the same in sales, but also the same, you know, throughout the organization, even on the leadership team.
Yeah. A couple of thoughts on that from me. I think I actually had a conversation about this yesterday where, in order for sales to be fully systematized, you almost want it to be at a point where it's boring, in as much as these things just work, just do these things. Whereas I think if you think of the scrappy founder or the first people on a team, there's a lot of fun in figuring it out and
Exactly.
trying new things and getting creative and hey, I just tried this. And not that you should completely squash that, but we don't want to get to a point where every deal still requires net new thinking. It should be these things work, we do more of these things. And I feel like there's often also a reluctance to, like, no, I like the scrappy creativeness and thinking outside of the box every single time. But obviously, you can do that if you're a solo person or the person that's initially creating. But after that, like, you're on a one-way ticket to a very low ceiling. One of the things that you said that I'm really curious to jump into, which I 100% agree with, and that is you have different ceilings. Like the team that got you here won't be the team that got you there. Let's say it's the
Hmm.
1 million team, 10 million team, so on and so forth.
Yep.
It's very difficult to see the picture when you're in the frame. So if I'm the one that's building the company and I've got a salesperson perhaps that helped me get to a million, they've been there for a long time, what is the, if there is like some kind of click moment or realization stepping outside of the frame in order to recognize that maybe this isn't the person that's actually going to take me to the next frontier? Because I imagine when you're in the weeds of the day to day and in the trenches, it's quite difficult to spot that and have that realization.
Yeah, I think, you know, we got a lovely saying. You know, you can't see the label of a bottle from
Yeah.
inside the bottle. I mean, that's exactly what you're talking about there. I think you've got to look at the data. You know, so as you grow your business, you know, obviously your sales targets are gonna increase because you want to
Mm.
grow and scale your business. Um, and you know, is the sales team, is the salesperson that you've got, you know, able to scale that team to hit the targets that you want. And I think if you use the data, it becomes obvious fairly quickly that you've got a problem there. Now, you know, figuring out whether that's people problem, a system problem, a market problem. You've got to figure out what the root cause of the issue is. But if you are tracking your business correctly, the answers will be in the data.
Mm.
From the top of the funnel right down to the bottom of the
Yeah.
funnel.
Okay. Interesting. So I suppose, well, it's when you start to hit that plateau, hitting the ceiling, as you might say.
Yeah,
And once we've hit that ceiling for maybe a reasonable period of time, I suppose looking at other variables, be that market, be that process, be that people, and almost through process of elimination, it gets to a point where it's like, we know the market is there, and we know this process is perhaps works, but we need somebody else or something else in order to take us to the next level up.
exactly.
Yeah.
And it may be that, going back to the beginning of our conversation, it may be just that you've promoted your best, and I've seen this with many of my companies that I work with. They promoted their best salesperson to be the sales manager, sales lead, and they just haven't got the skills, and actually don't really want the skills, or don't want to work on the skills, because if you're a great salesperson, they tend to be hungry, driven, and really love the win of the sale, and you're taking that away from them by managing a team of people who they probably don't really like that much, and they're already in that position, probably from an ego perspective, that that there's a certain amount of kudos of being a leader and manager within a business, and in reality they could be much happier and earn much more money by doing what they love and they're great at, which is selling.
It is, but I think it also introduces an interesting paradox, which is we've got a really good person, really good, ambitious people want to experience progress. But the paradox is the traditional progress of developing through the ranks would actually be a poison chalice for this individual.
Yeah,
So I suppose then the question becomes, well, how do you still create progress for the individual where it feels just as rewarding, not like it's a gimmick or a gimme, but it doesn't necessarily lead to a management path? Is there anything that you've seen there as to what might be a good takeaway or approach so that we don't lose that talent and end up going somewhere else in order to become that sales manager, which they don't end up like doing? Because it is one of the most common problems. But then, yeah, the alternative problem is that you churn the person because they want the jump up.
yeah. The options are, you keep the person where they are, or if they desperately want to become a leader and manager, that they you maybe you have to exit them from the business, and like you said, churn them over, which is always a shame, because I think when you have, we call it right people, right seats, right people that share your values. When you have right people in your business, so they're almost gold. You sort of got to hold on to them. So what have I seen? I've got to say I haven't seen great examples of this, because it's a really big challenge, and I actually think where if I think back to some of my businesses that have made this successful, it actually comes down to the sales manager, the sales director, leader, being able to lead and manage in a way that helps the individual understand what they love and best at. And I think that requires great leadership and management. So without that, that person is always going to want to get into that leadership and management seat. And I actually think it's our it's our responsibility, if we're running a business and we've got leaders and managers in the business, it's our responsibility to create a life progression program, or a career progression with every individual within the business, whether or not that progression ends up staying in the business or it's somewhere outside. And so you're not always going to be able to fulfill everybody's, when I say wants, I think I'm thinking more belief that they want to be a leader and manager than you actually can for the greater good of the business.
Yeah, agreed. One of the things that, having a couple of prior experiences come to mind for me, and one of them that comes to mind is basically try before you buy. So how is it that we can create almost like a petri dish experiment of what being a sales leader is going to be like before they formally commit to it? Because it's very binary, if you like, or there's a big problem if it's very binary. You're a salesperson, tomorrow you are now a sales manager with zero training, zero actual understanding of what it is beyond the perception of the grandeur of the title. And so if you then go into that and you're now running deal reviews, call reviews, sales meetings, leadership meetings, tracking the data, digging through the CRM, but a lot of people hate that.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I saw a leader do before, which was very effective, was the try before you buy concept was like, okay, I want you to run the sales meeting, or we're going to rotate it to give you the opportunity to run the sales meeting and just see how you find it. And you can also buddy up with one of the new starters that's on the team, and you can help onboard them a little bit. And so it's then helping them get their feet wet and see if they lean in or if they just naturally tend to lean out. With this particular individual, what was quite fascinating was they ended up actually naturally leaning out, because when on a busy day, what is it that they end up choosing to do? Do they end up chasing the deal that they're still working on? And there's that pull back to the thrill of the kill, or do they want to lean into helping on board the new starter?
Yep.
When faced with those choices, you get to start to see a little bit more what the DNA is, but more importantly, they get to see what their own DNA is. And it's infinitely more powerful if they make the decision and they come back to you, perhaps a little bit tail between the legs. Hey, do you know what? Maybe this wasn't actually for me. I just want to be out hunting.
And I love that. I mean, that comes back to being a great leader and manager. That they, as a leader and manager in the right seat, they figured out a way of helping, a team member understand what it might look like to own that seat, to give that individual the right information for them to make that decision for themselves. That's great. I love that. I'm going to suggest that to some of my my
it's
teams.
It's yours. I want to switch gears a little bit. I want to get into accountability.
Right.
Accountability. Whenever if I'm speaking to a prospect or a business owner, frequently they will say, "Do you know what we're lacking? If it's not that my team can't close, they're just not accountable. They're just not having ownership." But then sometimes I'll see in organizations pretty brutal treatment dressed up as accountability. It's like, that's not accountable. That's just like toxic. So I think where I want to start off, given that you've seen this in so many organizations, how would you describe healthy accountability?
Right. Okay. Well, let's get this right from the start. I don't believe that accountability is something that you do to your people. Our job, accountability actually is a byproduct of being a great leader and manager. So you can't do it to people. When you do accountability to people, then that's when you get that sort of forceful. What do you say? Dressed up as?
Um, so it's basically toxicity, but
Yeah,
dressed up
toxicity.
accountability.
Toxicity dressed up as accountability. And so our job is a job of a leader and manager within a business. The job of a leader and manager is to help accountable people thrive. So you got to have, first of all, you got to have people that are willing to be accountable. So that is the very first thing. I mean, if you've got people, and especially in the sales team, mm-hmm. where performance is so easy to measure.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at scorecards across businesses. The sales team. It's how many meetings you had. How many proposals you got out. It's so easy to measure. And so, if you've got a bunch of people in your sales team that don't like accountability, they're just not going to thrive. Mm-hmm. So I think the first thing you got to do is find people that are comfortable. You wouldn't play sports without a scorecard. You don't know who's won. You've got no idea who's won. Scorecard. It's the same thing in sales. I heard this great quote the other day. Not from one of my clients, but someone who runs a sales team. He said he always hires salespeople in threes, and says there's only going to be 2 jobs in 3 months' time. So they get to fight. They get to fight for the job.
Wow.
Pretty harsh, but
yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, that might also create its own toxicity.
Maybe, but I think if you've got the right people, it's probably going a little too far, but interesting concept.
So what I want to really unpick in order to make it really practical, because you said something which was really interesting that I don't feel like I've fully grasped.
Yep.
Which is accountability is not something that you do.
Yeah.
So my question then would be, well, how do you create accountability? If I'm the owner of a business and I want accountability in my function or in my business, but it's not necessarily something that I do, how do I then make it true?
Okay. So we've got we got this concept of leadership, management, and accountability, mm-hmm. and it's a little bit of a mass equation. Great leadership plus great management equals accountability. So accountability is that byproduct of being a great leader and manager, and so I think first of all, if you are sitting in a seat of with leadership and management, let's take the sales manager or sales lead or whatever. We don't use job titles in EOS. We just call it the sales seat. Mm-hmm. The person in that seat, first of all, has got to really want to be a great leader and manager. They've got to put in the time, the effort, and commitment to be a great leader and manager. And going back to what you said earlier, when they're doing their working daily, what are they working on? Are they working to close that sale, or are they really spending the time and effort and commitment on building a great team? Okay, so that's the first thing. I mean, and that's sort of a non-negotiable. If you don't want to be a great leader and manager, you're just not in the right seat. And so, you've got to, from a management, leadership is more on the business and, setting a vision for your people, giving them the right resources, the tools, etc. It's about working for the greater good. So within as a leader and manager, you're always moving between, inspiring and painting a vision of the future, and management, which is more in the business and day-to-day execution. And from a managing, to create an environment of accountability, from a management perspective, you've got to make sure that you're giving clear expectations. You've got to set clear expectations for your people. So what does it mean to win the week? What do they have to do every week? What are their targets in a sales function? Are they living up to your core values? Are they achieving their objectives every month, every quarter? So you've got to give really clear expectations, because if you don't do that, then how do they know? How does the person know, what they need to live up to?
Yeah.
You've got to communicate well. So you've got to really understand what's on each other's minds. So you've got to really, with salespeople, you're in a conversation. I've seen this with many of my teams. You're in a conversation with someone, they give you that look, and when you're busy, it's really easy just to walk away, thinking as though they're frustrated or annoyed with you. So you've got to spend the time with them and really understand, why the look, and really get on the same page, and get them on the same page with you. You've got to have a weekly meeting as a team with clear measurables, and so everybody can see, how they're performing against each other. Then you start building not just accountability to their leadership team, but you want to build this team accountability. Just like a football team. You've got to make sure that everybody on the field is doing what they're meant to be doing on a weekly basis.
I've got a client at the moment,
Mm-hmm.
big client, and what you've referenced a couple of times in this conversation is team numbers. Team numbers are bad.
Yep.
And I 100%, million percent agree with you. You can very easily hide behind a team number,
Mm-hmm.
and good performers can easily obfuscate the underperformers, and there's no urge for action or remedial change, if you like.
Mm-hmm.
Where the rubber hits the road is the transition from one to the other. And I think it becomes less about, okay, so what are the numbers? Here you go, done. Because there's real emotions involved. I mean, this company has been in business for 10 plus years, where they've had some of these people here, and they've never had individual targets.
Mm-hmm.
So the concept to the leader was kind of like, yeah, I get it. But his biggest reservation was less about the what, but more about the how, in as much as how do I get these people on board with having the individual targets without having a revolt on the team. So I suppose going from 0 to 1 when it comes to those measurables. Now, obviously, in EOS, you'll have done this across lots and lots and lots of different departments as well as just sales. And I suppose it will be a similar principle, if you like, because it's the creation of KPIs and numbers, and you now own this. What tends to be your recommendation to founders when it comes to the rollout of the individual metrics and ownership of them?
Yeah. Well, it's really not just my recommendation, but it's what I've seen work.
Sure.
Within businesses. So you've got to build, whether it's, I'm going to use a bit of EOS talks, whether it's scorecard numbers and measurables or rocks, you've got to build these numbers as a team and build them with the individuals. So you've got to, there's going to be, as a manager, there's going to be certain numbers you want in there, obviously. But what you really want to do is help. And as a leader manager, you've got to be a coach. You want to coach them to figure out, what does it mean for them to win the week? What does it mean for the individual to lose the week? And what numbers do we need to track to figure out whether you're winning or losing? And if you're a great leader and manager, you will help that individual come up with the right numbers, with the right goals for the week. And the same with the 90-day rocks. What do we need to do as a team? And so I think it's so important to build great teams throughout the organization, and the sales team is no different. But you've got to involve. Don't give people KPIs or measurables. Especially if you're going from 0 to
Yeah.
You know,
And by the
if
way, you're really far behind.
exactly, here we go. We expect 27,000, phone calls a week.
Yeah.
Where previously you've done two. What that you're going to demotivate people in seconds.
Mm,
So you've got, it's a journey. I
yeah.
think what we're getting to here is that accountability is especially if you're going from zero to nothing.
Yeah.
Accountability is a journey. You've got to take them on the journey. You've got to train them. I think with leadership and management, if you've got a problem with someone, you've always got to look at yourself first.
Hmm.
Have I, am I giving the person the right tools? Am I setting clear direction? Am I communicating well? Do we have the right meetings? Do they have the right measurables? And then in those meetings, so it's not, you don't want to use these numbers to beat people over the head with, you don't want it to be toxic. And so every time when you've got individual measurables every week, every time someone is winning and someone is losing, there's an opportunity to someone to learn and get better. What is John doing that Lucy's not, or Richard's not? That means they're getting the numbers and the other people are not getting numbers. What are we doing differently? Can we systemize something? Can we make something better? Got to look at yourself before you lay into the to the person, the
No, I
individual.
really like that. I really like that. One of the things, and this is a variable depending on how big the team is, but quite often I look at it as if you've got a team of, let's say, 5 or 6 people, and you've got one person that's underperforming, it's probably on them. If you've got a team of people that are underperforming, it's probably on you.
Exactly.
What's
Exactly.
the theme? What's the
What
theme?
what is the theme? And remember, with people and with teams, if you have one bad week, it's an accident. 2 bad weeks, it's probably a coincidence. But if you've got 3 data points, it's a pattern. And that's even more reason why you've got to measure things weekly as well. Because, if you're measuring things monthly, that's a quarter of a year gone before you've got a pattern that something bad
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
is happening.
So something I'm interested to know, and this is something that I see a lot, and something that I don't think gets spoken about very much, which is the founder wants accountability for everyone else.
I know where this is going.
Right. And then you fast forward a little bit, and especially if the founder might still be getting involved in deals and still might be within different areas and departments, and then everyone else is being held accountable, but they're operating to their own rule set. But then the question in the business is they're doing their own thing. Yeah, we're all supposed to do it like this, but they come in and they do it like that. How do you break that cycle?
I would say what I've seen is with my teams, it's a really tricky situation, and that's partly why we created the visionary seat on
You
the
go over
council.
that.
It's somewhere for the visionary to go and still still feel as though they're valuable and that they're useful within the business. No, that's not totally true, but there's an element of truth in there. I think first of all, the having a really strong integrator in the business,
There we go.
it makes a huge difference. So it enables the visionary.
People that might not be EOS fluent
Oh,
that might be
yeah,
listening. You just explain that.
yeah, sure. So all great businesses have two, I'd call them seats, or two people at the top of the business. They tend to have the founder, the visionary, who's a little crazy, likes to do 1,000 things at the same time, probably never finishes anything, likes to be at 30,000 feet. And that is the energy that got the business going.
Mm.
And I almost call it the soul. It's like the soul of a business, and you never want to lose that soul of the business. But when you get to, 2 million, 10, 15 people, that way of managing creates chaos in the business. And I've been there. I was a visionary. I created chaos in my business. It's just the way I like to work. I don't like to follow process, or I didn't. I mean, I still don't like to follow process, but I know it's good for me, and I know it gives me additional time elsewhere that I can use more effectively. So we have what we call a visionary seat, and then we have what we call an integrator seat. And if you look at Disney, the two brothers were visionaries and integrators. You look at Ford, the two brothers, I think again were visionaries and integrators. And the integrator is the person that beats the drum of the company. They're the glue that holds everything together, and they harmoniously integrate how the leadership team plays together to achieve a common vision. So they have the tough conversations. They're in the detail of the business. And when you have these two leaders, we call it rocket fuel. It's like rocket fuel for your business, because you get to harness the energy of the visionary in the business in the right way, so they are not disruptive and the business is focused and everybody's rowing in the same direction. So when you have going back to your question, does that help explain?
Yeah, wonderful scene set.
So when you have visionaries, they won't follow process. They're not going to do sales in the way that you want them to, and I think you've got to accept that to a certain extent. But what you want to get to the point is where the sales function is humming, it's systemized. It gives the visionary the confidence that things are working, and we're getting the sales in, and then you use uses the wrong word, and it uses the wrong word. Then you harness the qualities, the great qualities of your visionary when you need them to inspire salespeople, to bring them into the deals when you need them at that last bit to have that relationship with the CEO of another business to close the deal. And so you get to, when you get it right with the right visionary and the integrator, you get to harness all those wonderful qualities of the visionary all over your organization, and you maintain the soul of the business. And then by having that seat, everybody gets to understand what the visionary, what their roles are, and how they positively impact the business.
Yeah, that's a really good illustration of it. And so to sort of compress that down, when it comes to the owner of the company being held accountable, I suppose that the key to the unlock there is really the integrator. Like, that is the one that needs to be holding the line. That is the one that keeps the checks and balances in place and stops anything from going too far. But without that central seat connecting those two worlds of visionary and those that are doing the execution beneath, then you're going to get chaos and frustration and all of those other things that often then lead to a lack of a healthy culture.
Exactly, because you get, visionaries can be what I call seagulls. Their attention is taken all over the place. I did this, so I'm guilty. I'm guilty of this. I flew in, shat over everything, and then left chaos, and then left.
And then off you went.
And off I went, feeling like I did some good, but in reality, I just pissed everybody off. And so the integrator, being that filter, really, really, really helps the business scale and grow. And if you can build a great relationship there, it really is like rocket fuel.
Amazing. Well, look, thank you very much, Jason. In order to wrap this up, there's just two things that I want from you. Number one, just for anyone who's currently listening, I want you to just share a little bit about the conference that we have coming up later this year. And then just after that, to also share how people can find you.
Okay, so yeah, we have our EOS European conference where Sales Velocity, thank you very much, are going to be a sponsor at the conference. It is on the 19th and 20th of October at the Vox in Birmingham. And if you've ever read the book Traction by Gino Wickman, this may be the first and last time that you're going to get to hear him in the UK. And so if you want to hear the sort of the person, the godfather of EOS and Traction, please go and how are you going to find us? It's can we put it in the link or anything?
Yeah. We'll share it in the link.
Yeah, sharing the link. Please click on the link and register for the conference coming up in October.
Amazing. And then how to find you personally?
Find me personally, probably just type in Jason Green EOS on LinkedIn and you'll find me. All my contact details are there. Always happy to have talked to business owners about their business and their challenges. It's what gets me up and out of bed in the morning. I just love helping entrepreneurs get what they want from their business.
Wonderful stuff. All right. Thank you, Jason.
Lovely. Thank you, Oliver. Take care.